On a brisk evening in a quaint, bustling town square, the Mystery Inc. gang found themselves drawn to an unusual event, a heated political debate, unfolding in the center stage of the Grand Hall. The air buzzed with energy as citizens gathered to watch two charismatic candidates go head-to-head. Unbeknownst to the crowd, the night would take a dark turn. As Velma adjusted her glasses and took meticulous notes, the lights flickered ominously. Suddenly, a ghastly apparition, the ghostly form of Trump, materialized on stage, pointing directly at Velma. "You've meddled for the last time," it bellowed before swooping down and whisking her away. Gasps erupted as the audience froze in terror. The scene was chaos. Daphne, ever composed even in the face of danger, grabbed Fred's arm. "We have to do something," she exclaimed. Fred nodded, his jaw set with determination. Shaggy, clutching Scooby, stammered, did you see that? A real ghost just kidnapped Velma." Scooby whimpered in agreement, hiding behind his friend. Fred quickly took charge, scanning the stage for clues. Amid the confusion, Daphne's sharp eyes caught sight of a trail of golden dust leading away from the stage. "That's our first lead," she said, her voice resolute. As the gang followed the glittering trail, it led them to the backstage area of the hall, where they discovered signs of a hasty retreat, an overturned chair, a smashed microphone, and most curiously, a half-eaten burger. Shaggy's nose twitched. "Looks like someone left their midnight snack," he muttered. Scooby sniffed the air and barked, pulling Shaggy toward a nearby door marked "Staff Only." Fred examined the scene closely. "Whoever staged this wanted it to look supernatural," he said. "But ghosts don't leave fast food behind." The trail led them out of the hall and into the town's shadowy alleyways. The streets were eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of the debate continuing without its star audience. Daphne's heels clicked on the cobblestones as she clutched her flashlight. "This feels too orchestrated," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "If someone wanted Velma out of the way, it has to be tied to what she knows." Fred nodded. Velma's research might have uncovered something big. "Let's keep moving." They finally reached a dilapidated theater at the edge of town, its marquee flickering faintly with the words "Closed for renovation." Scooby growled softly, his hackles raised. Fred pushed the heavy doors open, revealing a dusty interior filled with props, costumes, and old set pieces. Shaggy's eyes darted nervously around. "Why do I feel like we're walking into a trap?" he whispered. Fred raised a hand for silence, motioning for them to fan out. As they searched, the faint sound of Velma's voice echoed from somewhere deep within the building, calling for help. Their resolve hardened as they pressed forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The gang moved cautiously through the theater's labyrinth of shadowy corridors, their flashlights casting long, trembling beams of light. Dust hung heavy in the air, disturbed only by their footsteps and the faint sound of Velma's voice echoing from somewhere ahead. "Help! I'm in here!" her cry came again, faint but insistent. Daphne's grip on her flashlight tightened. "She's close," she said, her voice filled with determination. Fred nodded, his mind already mapping their next steps. "Stay sharp. Whoever's behind this won't make it easy for us." As they ventured deeper, Shaggy and Scooby lingered at the back, their nerves fraying with every creak and groan of the old building. Why couldn't we just wait outside? Shaggy whispered, clutching Scooby's fur. Scooby whimpered in agreement, his nose twitching nervously. Suddenly, Scooby stopped, sniffing the ground. "Raggy, Rook," he barked, pointing to a faint trail of crumbs leading toward a side door. Fred paused to inspect it. "Good work, Scoob," he said. "Looks like our kidnapper has a penchant for late-night snacks." The side door creaked open to reveal a small dressing room, its mirror shattered and costumes strewn across the floor. On the vanity, they found a hastily scribbled note. "Stay out of this, or you'll regret it." Daphne's brow furrowed, as she read it aloud. "Someone's getting desperate," she said, her tone unwavering. Velma's voice called out again, closer this time. "It's a diversion," Fred concluded. "They're trying to scare us off. Let's keep moving." Following the trail of crumbs, the gang arrived at the theater's grand stage. There, bathed in the eerie glow of a single spotlight, stood a life-size cardboard cutout of the ghostly figure they'd seen before. Fred approached it cautiously, his instincts on high alert. "It's a prop," he muttered, running his hand over the painted surface. Daphne examined the area around the stage, her sharp eyes catching a faint glimmer on the floor. "Gold dust," she said, holding up her find. "They've been here." As they pieced together the clues, a sudden crash echoed from the rafters above. Shaggy and Scooby jumped, clinging to each other. "Shikes! What was that?" Shaggy exclaimed. Fred looked up, his flashlight beam catching movement in the shadows. "We're not alone," he said grimly. The gang braced themselves as the sound of footsteps descended from the catwalk. "You meddling kids have gone far enough." A voice boomed, revealing the ghostly figure once again, its golden aura shimmering menacingly. But this time, Fred wasn't fooled. "It's just another trick," he said. "Let's unmask this mystery." The gang froze as the shimmering figure descended from the rafters, its golden aura pulsating with an otherworldly glow. "You shouldn't have come this far," it hissed, its voice reverberating through the theater. Daphne tightened her grip on Fred's arm, her eyes scanning for any clues to its true nature. Shaggy and Scooby huddled together, trembling but unwilling to flee. "Rah-rah," Scooby whimpered as the figure raised a hand, sending a gust of wind that extinguished their flashlights. In the darkness, Velma's voice rang out again, louder and more frantic. "It's a trap! Don't trust what you see!" Her warning seemed to embolden Fred, who stepped forward with the flashlight from his pocket. "You're not a ghost," he declared, his voice steady. "You're someone using tricks to scare people away." The figure hesitated for a fraction of a second before laughing, its golden aura flickering like a dying light bulb. "You think you've got it all figured out, don't you?" it taunted. Fred's confidence grew as he motioned for Daphne to flank the figure. "It's just theatrics," he whispered to her. "We need to find the source." Daphne nodded, her sharp instincts leading her to spot a small control panel hidden beneath a pile of props. "Got it," she said, carefully flipping the switches one by one. As she worked, the ghost's form began to waver, its movements becoming erratic. "No, stop," it bellowed, its voice losing the menacing edge it once had. Meanwhile, Shaggy and Scooby followed their noses to a nearby trapdoor, partially hidden by a tattered curtain. "Like, I don't know about you, Scoob, but I'm getting some serious bad vibes here," Shaggy whispered. Scooby nodded, but his curiosity got the better of him. Together, they lifted the trapdoor to reveal a dimly lit tunnel. "Guys, over here," Shaggy called, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. Fred and Daphne rushed over, the flickering ghost now barely holding its form. With one final switch, Daphne disabled the ghost's illusion entirely, revealing a projector and an elaborate system of mirrors. "It was a setup," she said triumphantly. From the tunnel emerged a disheveled man, his face instantly recognizable from campaign posters scattered across the town. "Franklin McCoy?" Velma's voice carried disbelief as she emerged from the shadows, freed from her captor. "Why?" she demanded. The man sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I was losing the election," he admitted. "Scaring people was the only way I could draw attention to myself." Fred shook his head. "Well, you've got our attention now, and a lot of explaining to do." The gang stared down the dimly lit tunnel, its walls lined with exposed pipes and crumbling bricks. The faint hum of machinery echoed, adding an unsettling backdrop to the moment. "We need to see where this leads," Fred said, his voice resolute. Velma adjusted her glasses and nodded, her curiosity piqued. If McCoy went to such lengths to build this setup, there's more to this than just his failing campaign, she observed. Shaggy and Scooby exchanged nervous glances, but followed reluctantly, Scooby sniffing the air for any signs of trouble. The group moved cautiously through the tunnel, their flashlights casting long shadows on the uneven walls. Daphne's sharp eyes scanned every nook and cranny, her intuition guiding her. These tunnels aren't new, she noted. They've been here for decades. Velma ran her fingers along a set of faded markings etched into the wall. It's an old smuggling route, she explained, excitement creeping into her tone. This town must have had a history with Prohibition-era activity. Fred's brow furrowed. And McCoy's using it now? For what? He wondered aloud. As they delved deeper, Shaggy and Scooby stumbled upon a wooden crate partially hidden under debris. Like, check this out, Shaggy called, prying it open with some effort. Inside were stacks of fake ballots and forged documents, all bearing McCoy's name. Velma's eyes widened as she inspected the contents. This is serious, she said. He wasn't just scaring people. He was trying to rig the entire election. Daphne took photos with her camera, her determination evident. We need to get this to the authorities, she said. Fred nodded in agreement, though his instincts told him there was still more to uncover. Further down the tunnel, they reached a metal door secured with a rusty padlock. Fred grabbed a crowbar from his bag, making quick work of the lock. The door creaked open to reveal a small control room filled with monitors and audio equipment. This is how he controlled the ghost illusion, Velma deduced, pointing to the intricate setup. Scooby sniffed the air and barked, drawing their attention to a file cabinet in the corner. Inside, they found detailed blueprints of the theater and notes outlining McCoy's plans to sabotage the election. He wanted to create chaos, Velma concluded, piecing everything together. If people thought the town was cursed, they turned to him as their savior. Suddenly, the faint sound of footsteps echoed through the tunnel behind them. "We've got company," Fred said, motioning for everyone to stay quiet. The gang turned off their flashlights and hid behind a stack of crates. A shadowy figure entered the room, muttering to themselves as they surveyed the scene. Daphne's eyes narrowed as she recognized the figure. "It's McCoy," she whispered. Fred motioned for Velma to start recording as they prepared to confront him. When the time was right, Fred stepped out of the shadows. "End of the line, McCoy," he said firmly. The man froze, his face contorted in shock as he realized his elaborate scheme had been uncovered. McCoy's eyes darted around the room as if searching for an escape, but Fred's firm stance blocked the only exit. "You've been caught red-handed," Fred said, holding up one of the forged ballots. "Care to explain how all this ties into your ghostly charade?" Daphne stepped forward, her camera poised. "The town deserves answers," she said sternly. McCoy's shoulders slumped, and he let out a bitter laugh. "You think it's that simple?" he sneered. "This town's been against me from the start. All I did was level the playing field." Velma, clutching the stack of incriminating documents, interjected. "So you decided to stage a haunting to distract everyone while you rigged the election?" Her voice carried both incredulity and disgust. McCoy's expression darkened. "People love a good scare," he retorted. "They stop asking questions when they're too busy running from ghosts." Shaggy peeked out from behind a crate, his voice shaking. "Like, you could have just run a fair campaign." Scooby nodded emphatically. "Rare campaign." Fred motioned to the monitors, where the equipment still displayed footage of various parts of the town. "You used this setup to spy on people, didn't you?" he accused. McCoy smirked, unrepentant. "Knowledge is power," he said simply, "and fear is the ultimate tool." Daphne's eyes narrowed as she captured his confession on camera. "Well, your fear tactics just backfired," she said. "The evidence we've gathered is more than enough to expose you." As the gang began collecting the incriminating items, McCoy made a sudden dash toward the door. "He's getting away!" Velma shouted. Fred reacted quickly, intercepting McCoy and pinning him against the wall. "Not so fast," Fred said, his voice resolute. "You're not leaving until you answer for what you've done." Daphne called the local sheriff's office, providing details about their location and the evidence they had uncovered. "They're on their way," she announced, her tone steady. With McCoy restrained, Velma flipped through the documents one last time. "There's a list of accomplices here," she said, her expression grim. He wasn't working alone. Fred frowned, his grip on McCoy tightening. "Who else is involved?" he demanded. McCoy smirked but said nothing. "We'll find out," Daphne said confidently, snapping another picture of the room. As sirens wailed in the distance, the gang knew their work wasn't over yet. The truth was unraveling, but the full story had yet to be told. The sound of sirens grew louder as the sheriff's car skidded to a halt outside the abandoned theater. Officers stormed in, their flashlights slicing through the darkness. "Right here," Fred called, gesturing to McCoy, who stood with his hands raised in defeat. One of the deputies cuffed him while another examined the equipment and documents the gang had collected. "This is quite the operation," the sheriff said, shaking his head. "You kids did a great job uncovering this." Velma handed over the stack of incriminating papers. "These should provide everything you need to charge him," she said, adjusting her glasses. Daphne added, "There are also accomplices listed in these documents. It's bigger than just McCoy." The sheriff's expression darkened as he flipped through the evidence. "We'll track down everyone involved," he promised. "But you've already saved this town from a major disaster." Outside the theater, the gang gathered under the first rays of dawn. Shaggy leaned against the mystery machine, clutching a steaming cup of coffee. "Man, I'm just glad we're done with all those ghosts," he said, his voice still tinged with lingering fear. Scooby barked in agreement, wagging his tail. "Agreed." Velma chuckled. "It wasn't a real ghost, Shaggy. Just a desperate politician trying to scare people into submission." Fred turned to the group, his expression proud. "We solved another mystery, and we've helped the town see the truth. That's what matters." Daphne smiled, leaning against the van. "And we've got everything on record. McCoy's confession, the forged ballots, and the rigged ghost setup. He won't be able to talk his way out of this one." Velma nodded, her mind already analyzing the case. "The authorities will handle the rest. But I'm curious to see how deep this conspiracy goes." As the gang piled into the mystery machine, ready to head back to their normal lives, Shaggy's stomach growled loudly. "Like, can we stop for pancakes on the way home?" he asked, earning a laugh from everyone. "Haha, pancakes," Scooby added enthusiastically. Fred started the engine, the sound of the van's hum signaling the end of their latest adventure. As they drove off, the town skyline faded behind them, but the satisfaction of uncovering the truth lingered. Whatever mysteries lay ahead, they knew they'd face them together.